I'm going to very quickly, and you will see the various things behind. I'll give you, just in case anyone in this room has not seen, that it's basically, and then we'll talk about many things very quickly in our 10 minutes. But very quickly, the results are basically these, is that it's a sort of something for everyone night, where the Democrats have taken the House, but they have not taken it with a massive blue wave, I think it'd be fair to say, but enough that Nancy Pelosi looks very likely to be Speaker, and Donald Trump has already rung her and congratulated her. In the Senate, the Republicans, it looks likely that they will increase their majority to 53-47. They picked up in Indiana and North Dakota, won an open seat in Tennessee. They also hung on, as you saw, in Texas and Florida. And on governorships, it was again something of a mixed bag. The Republicans hung on in Florida and Ohio, but the Democrats won in Michigan, Illinois, and Pennsylvania. So it's a night where both sides can declare some victories. But David, you give your first reaction.
I have a couple of comments, but first let me ask people here, how many people think it's an American conceit to worry about these midterm elections too much? Anybody think the Americans want everybody else in the world to think these elections are that important? Anybody worried about it? No? How many people here think that Donald Trump is going to change his policies as a result of the election? Okay? How many people here think that they now, having seen these election results, want to run for president themselves? Anybody? No volunteers? Okay. A couple points. One, first, this election restores our faith in pollsters. They did a much better job than they did in Brexit and in the last presidential election. So I'm glad to see the polling profession is doing well. This is pretty much what they predicted. Second, the U.S. economy has done pretty well in recent times, over the past 30 years or so, when Congress has been split in control. So you shouldn't automatically assume that the economy will go south just because the parties are different. The houses are controlled by different parties, in part because when you have houses controlled by different parties, they actually have to compromise a bit if they're going to get anything done, and this tends to actually sometimes be positive. Another point I would make is that I think it's very likely that despite the fact that 50 people running for the House said that they would not vote for Nancy Pelosi as Speaker, I think that she will be the next Speaker. She may not say she'll be Speaker for 20 years or so, but she will be the next Speaker in almost all certainty. I think the real question that people should watch is what the Democrats are going to do with power. Power sometimes goes to your head, and it could go to their head, and all of a sudden they issue subpoenas, and all of a sudden they're having investigations which are designed not so much to do legislative things, but to maybe embarrass the administration. If they pursue that hard left policy, I suspect that they will find it won't exceed the way they think, and probably will not lead to the results they want. But if they pursue a more narrow policy of trying to get something done and not trying to just take advantage of their power, the new power, I suspect that Congress will be more effective than it's been before. But hope springs eternal, so nobody really knows. I do think in the Senate, you'll see the Senate being probably more moderate than it's been in the past because they'll have to deal with the House. And I think as a result, they will probably work with the House leadership more than you might expect. So don't think that all of a sudden the U.S. government is going to shut down or this be as ineffective as it would be if both houses were controlled by the same party. I think when you have different houses controlled by different parties, I think sometimes it actually works better for our country. At least it has in the past.
Just talk a bit about the Democrats in the House, because that's the big change. I mean, there's quite an interesting bit there. On the one hand, you've already got, in New York, you've got the Attorney General saying that she will start investigating again into the Trump family, real estate holdings, and various Democrats making noises about that. On the other hand, the really interesting thing is that what seems to have happened is that in suburban America, college-educated women have begun to come out to vote for candidates who, on the whole, are actually fairly moderate. They're people who've gone, they were the first fighter pilot woman in Iraq. They're those sort of people. These are not Democrats from the far left.
Well, I do think the story that will be written by many people will be that this is the midterm election of women because women got elected in very large numbers. Women came out to vote in very large numbers. And I think women have begun to exercise their political rights and election rights much more than they have before. And I think that will be a story. And I think that trend is one you can expect to see. The Democrats will have to deal with the age issue. They have three leaders now who are older. I think they're 78, 77, and 77, I think. So, that isn't a youth movement. On the other hand, in politics, there's an old saying, you can't beat somebody with nobody. You can't beat somebody with nobody. And there is nobody who's in the youth movement, the younger members of the House, Democrats, who are clearly somebody who could take on the Speaker or take on the other people who are older. So I suspect you'll have some kind of transition where they'll have some younger members be in some kind of advisory capacity, or they'll create a new leadership position for younger people. But I don't expect overnight the people who are now running the House, all of us, or will be running the House, will all of a sudden disappear.
What do you think would, if somebody came and offered you a job in the Trump White House, it's still possible, would you now be much more nervous about taking it because of the chances of endless legal investigations?
I wouldn't be more nervous about taking it now because I wouldn't have taken it before, but I'd say clearly there will be investigations. Whether those investigations are really going to have a serious impact on the ability of the administration to get things done, I'm not sure. Investigations take on a life of their own sometimes, but right now I think the Mueller investigation is likely to be public and finished by the end of the year. I don't know for certain. I don't have any inside information, but I suspect that's probably the case. And once that's done, I suspect that there won't be that many more investigations that will disrupt the administration's day-to-day life. But there will be some hearings and so forth. But whether they're going to be able to get all the subpoenas issued and get the information they want, I'm not sure.
And what about one last bit, just on the foreign policy, the thing we've all been discussing here, the relationship with China? If we were both advising the Chinese and creeping into Xi Jinping's room to tell him something, would we say this has weakened Trump, or he's going to be pretty much the same? I
don't think the president will think that he's been weakened. Gary Cohn, where's Gary? Gary was here earlier, and I think he said he didn't think the president would...
he's already called it a tremendous success.
Right, he already didn't think the president would say this was a sign of defeat by him. He concentrated on the Senate, and the Senate did pretty well for the Republican point of view. I think that the president has said he would like a more moderate tone. We'll see whether he can go forward with that. But I think in the end, now that this election is over, I do think that the administration will try to see if they can get some arrangement with the Chinese that brings some kind of resolution to the uncertainties. I don't think it's a trade war. I call it a trade skirmish. Clearly, there's work to be done. But I believe the Chinese leadership, as we saw from some of the Chinese leaders here, would like to get something done. They just have to figure out exactly what the president really wants and who they have to negotiate it with. And those are issues that are not going to be known right away. But I think the president would be well served to try to reach an agreement with China, and I hope that that happens.
We have brilliantly used up all our time on that very short level, and I hope we've informed you and kept you up to date. So we will now hand over to a slightly longer panel. Thank you all very much.
Thanks. Thanks.